Blades fans, subscribe to Blades Ramble. Up the Blades.
As always, the Ramble is sponsored by Action Coach Sheffield. If you're a growing business and you want support to continue that growth, they are the people to speak to. Thank you for joining the team for their continued support for the Ramble. And today's Ramble is also sponsored by V&B Auto Centres at Handsworth. They're still offering that fantastic deal of 50% off your next MOT when you let them know you're a Rambler. Thank you again to Aaron and the team for their support also. What is happening, Blades? And welcome back to the Blades Ramble. I'm, of course, Jimmy, and today we've got a very special guest with us, somebody who I've followed for a long time, and I know a lot of Blades will be familiar with this man, so I'm delighted to welcome to the Blades Ramble. It's the one, the only, Paul Walker. How's it going, Paul?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, pal. Very well. Good to see you, and thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
No problem. No problem at all.
Good stuff. So we're going to get into a couple of bits that you've got going on very shortly. But first, I thought I'd ask you a few bits and bats about your career but you've been synonymous with local sports in Sheffield for some time now. Obviously, not an old man by any means, mate. But,
I am.
But I remember the famous sort of, obviously, you've had a spell in Radio Sheffield, the famous Leeds are getting spanked, which is absolutely brilliant to all Blades fans. How did you get started in presenting and in football commentary?
Oh, God, how long have you got? I know you do long podcasts, but that would be a very long podcast.
I can cut this now, mate, don't worry.
Yeah. Do you know what? I was at school. I wasn't thick, but I wasn't exceptionally bright. But I knew that I wanted to be involved in football in some capacity. And like a lot of young lads, you play Sunday morning football, don't you? But, you very quickly come to the realization that it's not going to be a career. But I knew I wanted to be involved in football in some capacity.
We've all been there, mate. We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, although I was very good for Ashley Spires, top scorer 3 seasons in a row.
Somebody's got to be.
Exactly. But no, I knew I wanted to kind of get into some kind of football broadcasting, and I got involved with Hallam FM kind of early 90s. So, back then Hallam were the ones that had all the exclusive football coverage rights. It wasn't BBC Radio Sheffield. They'd done special deals with all the football clubs, which meant that Radio Sheffield couldn't do commentary on the likes of Wednesday United and the rest, Barnsley, Rotherham, all of them. So I was invited to go in and just work behind the scenes, really. And I literally did start making tea on a Saturday afternoon whilst the show was going out. And, as time goes on, you get given more responsibility. And to cut a long story short, I was made sports editor there in it's kind of mid-90s. In fact, the only way I can remember it was Sheffield Wednesday's last season in the Premier League. So I got to commentate on Premier League football for half of that season. But my actual first commentary, because I was thrown in at the deep end, I'd never done commentary before. And my boss was suddenly fired, a man called Steve Banyard, who many fans watching this will probably remember. And they said, right, you're taking over from Steve. And by the way, you're going to Highbury tomorrow to do Sheffield United. And it was in the FA Cup. Do you remember Steve Bruce was manager and he took the players off?
Yes, I do.
He scored that controversial goal. And to be fair to Arsene Wenger, he agreed to have it replayed.
Unbelievable, that, isn't it? Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean,
would never happen now.
It wouldn't. So I went to Highbury on the Tuesday night, having never done a football commentary before, ever. And it was truly horrendous. I mean, I was so nervous, obviously. And it was, I don't have the recording, and that's probably a blessing because I don't think I could bear to listen to it back. But that was my first ever game. Obviously, United lost. Wow. I think Overmars scored, Bergkamp scored. And it kind of went on from there. So at the end of that season, Hallam made the decision that they weren't going to plough any more money into football coverage, and that was kind of a a nationwide decision in commercial radio that they were going to pull money out. It was costing them too much. So then that allowed Radio Sheffield to kind of get back into the ball game, as it were. And I made the leap from Hallam over to Sheffield, became sports editor there, and just had some brilliant times. You know, this is a Sheffield United channel, so I'll ignore the others. But following Sheffield United at that time, you know, under the Warnock era was just incredible, really. Absolutely incredible. You know, one of the most memorable seasons, obviously, is the season where Blades didn't win anything. 2 cup semi-finals.
Absolutely.
Playoff.
The triple assault season.
Exactly, yeah. Jags against Leeds, which, you know, you mentioned earlier on about that Leeds getting spanked clip. But it's the unbelievable one that I get reminded of all the time. And again, genuinely, I hate it. If I was commentating on that game again, I would not do it in the same way, which Blades fans might be disappointed with. But, I mean, it was just so ridiculously over the top. But at the same time, it kind of put me on the map. And if you go to the Football Museum in Manchester, I think a clip of that commentary and 1 or 2 others of mine is actually in the Football Museum, which is really odd because I took my kids there several years ago now, and they've got listening posts in there, and you can select which bit of commentary you want to listen to. And mine's in there.
Wow.
Which is quite something, really. But it's embarrassing.
You say that, Paul, but I love stuff like that because it's real emotion in the moment, and it doesn't necessarily mean. So I always think that, and I say it on this channel quite a bit, that I'm not always the most professional of presenters, but what you get is real. And in that, you certainly are a professional broadcaster, but in that moment, you get excited with the build up of the game and the moment that it is, and you capture the emotion of the fan base sometimes, no matter who you're working with or working for at that time. But you get so engrossed in the game, and it's a release, isn't it, of that emotion? So it's real, mate. And I think that's why it sticks with people, because it's an identifiable reaction to what we were feeling at the time as well. Yeah,
and you know that season, it just felt like, you know, they just never knew when they were beaten. Especially on those kind of Tuesday night games, that cup run. You know, Wayne Allison coming on from the bench, it was like clockwork. You knew 85 minutes comes round, Chiefs coming on, and something's going to happen. You know, you know, and the Forest game. Wow, the Forest game, which to this day is probably the best game I've ever commentated on for pure drama and the pure roller coaster of emotion. That is above all the others. I think that game had absolutely everything. 2-0 down, half time, game over, or so we thought. And that incredible comeback, Pesh with his goal and standing in front of the Kop, running off, saying, "Oh my God, oh my God!" It was just
Were you commentating with Cammy that night up on the gantry?
No, I was with Keith Edwards. It'll have been.
Oh, right, okay.
Been up there with Keith Edwards, but I remember looking across at my counterparts from Radio Nottingham, who were really good lads actually, and obviously they're in celebratory mood at the time because they're thinking we're off to the playoff final. I'm looking across thinking, it's going to end here, and then suddenly at the end, it was us that had the final laugh. But and then you get to the playoff final, and then it's all over by half time.
Well, we return to type, don't we? Revert to type.
That's history. But hopefully that won't have to be the case this year because, you know, playoffs and Sheffield United don't mix, do they? But I think we'll be all right this year, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to that maybe. So
please do.
Will do, mate. Will do. So you've worked extensively with Sheffield United since leaving Radio Sheffield.
10 years ago now, that. 11, actually. It'll be 11 years ago this year. And funnily enough, some people still think I work there, which I find staggering. There are still people, even now, that say, "I've not heard you on Football 11 for a bit." 11 years.
Wow.
11 years.
It's not like you've had a couple of shows out.
No,
and Gids is going to fill in for you for a bit. Okay. So when did you decide to make the transition into more sort of, freelancing essentially, where you would focus on more, obviously you still do your commentary work. I hear you're doing the EFL highlights, aren't you, every week as well, which is fantastic. And you've sort of branched out into events and interviewing players, which again we'll come to. But when did you decide to make that move? Because it's a big step into it. And then you sort of take on things like the SUTV pre-match last season and things like that.
It was it had been in my head for a couple of years. Look, this is a brilliant patch to follow football. You know, I lived the dream. It sounds corny, but I did live the dream, and I was very, very lucky to do what I did. But towards the latter end of my time at Radio Sheffield, the BBC had just taken on the EFL highlights, and if you cast your mind back, it was presented by Manish Bhasin and Steve Claridge, Leroy Rossignol, and I'd been asked by them to go and do some work ad hoc, some voiceover work, and I'd never done kind of TV work prior to that point. So I traipsed down to London, and you know, they obviously felt I did a reasonable job, and they said, "Look, you could do this more often." I said, "Well, I've got commitments to Radio Sheffield, really, so I can't make that kind of long-term commitment."
Yeah.
And that was probably the time where I started thinking, well, what else is there out there? And, you know, without being arrogant, I could probably have stayed at Radio Sheffield for as long as I wanted.
Yeah,
Bosses
absolutely.
watching this might disagree, but, you know, I felt comfy. It was like a pair of slippers for me.
Yeah.
And I think that was a bit of a warning sign as well, actually. I became quite comfortable there. I could do the job, but I couldn't really go any higher. And we all have ambitions. You know, my ambition was to work on Match of the Day, which, you know, fortunately I did. I've done 2 games for Match of the Day, admittedly, a long time ago. But, you know, that was a box ticked. So I kind of just wanted to broaden my horizons, see what else was out there. And I didn't want to look back later in life and think, what if, you know?
Yeah.
So I made the leap, and it was scary, and at times it still is scary, because being self-employed, you never know where your next paycheck's coming from, and you know, you might work for one production company who've got a contract for 3 years, then it's lost, it goes to somebody else. Touch wood, I'm hanging on in there. It's a very competitive industry, but when I look back in the 10 years that I left Radio Sheffield, I've been to 2 men's World Cups. I covered the last women's World Cup, been to Colombia and Argentina for some FIFA youth tournaments. I flew to Cairo for 1 game this year. So, you know, the opportunities that I've been given have been brilliant. And, you know, I've covered World Cup qualifiers, Euro qualifiers, Nations League, Chinese Super League, French League, German League. I've done it all.
It's brilliant, mate. It's brilliant.
So it's great. It's been brilliant, you know, and touch wood, still going.
Mate, it's inspirational. To somebody like myself, I've just gone full time. Yeah, incredibly scary and quite daunting. But it's a calculated risk that I'm taking, a little bit like yourself. I've not just leapt into it without thinking. So to hear somebody like yourself who followed their dreams and made it work, and it continues to make it work, is really inspirational for me. So thank you for sharing that. It's really good. The SUTV pre-match has it's gone away this season. What happened with that? Why are we not seeing it anymore? Because it were popular among the fan base.
I think, being honest, it probably came down to budgets. I don't know for certain. I enjoyed doing it. Don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoyed doing it, speaking to the players. And, you know, I do believe there is a gap for it, but you would expect me to say that. It was work for me that I don't have anymore. But, you know, Sheffield United are, you know, great to work for, really good people. And when I got the call saying, look, we're going to try and do it ourselves and go in a different direction, I fully respect that. Whether that will change now under the new ownership, I appreciate. A preview show probably isn't at the top of their list of priorities, but maybe further down the line they'll look at it and decide that they want to bring it back. And if they do, then they know where I am. I'm definitely here. I'd be interested in doing it, because I do miss that contact with the players. I don't get that very often now. Like back in the Radio Sheffield days, attending the press conferences and doing the post-match interviews, you'd strike up a rapport with players. Now it's rare that I do that. I turn up, I commentate on a game, I might talk to a manager afterwards, and then I go home. So I don't have that daily contact. So yeah, I miss the Sheffield United stuff, and I miss working with like Carla Saba and Michael Brown, Cozzy, and all of that gang, and the people behind the scenes there at Blades. But you know, at the moment, I'm just hoping they can get over the line and, you know, get promoted.
You've interviewed scores of Sheffield United players, current players, legends, managers. So is there one that's particularly memorable to you, or surprising in any way, or any that stand out as good storytellers? Something that you really enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Neil earlier on. I mean,
Yeah.
the stories I could share about him. Good grief. I mean, I'll let you into one here, right? So Keith Edwards obviously was Radio Sheffield's Sheffield United summariser for many, many years, and brilliant at it, and a legend, obviously. There was a time where, you know, there were a few icky performances, let's say, and Keith was never frightened of putting his opinions out there, good or bad. And I remember I once got a call from Neil. It was like on a Monday morning after a Saturday game. And he said, Paul, Keith, I don't like what he's saying about, and I think it was Sean Murphy. I think he'd made a comment about Sean Murphy or Peter Unlove, maybe both, probably both. He said, I don't like what Keith's saying about Summit lads, and they're not happy about it. We need a meeting. I was like, okay, come to me house Wednesday, bring Keith. I was like, right, okay. So I phoned Keith, and he was a little bit, he wants a meeting with us. I said, yeah, let's go. Right, yeah, we'll go. So I went to his house with Keith. So he answers the door, Neil. He says, come in, lads, take your shoes off. took us through to the conservatory. And he got his wife, Sharon, who's lovely, by the way, to make us a brew. And he came in, he said, right, I'll get straight to it, Keith. The thing is, I've not been happy with a couple of things you've been saying about the lads. But between you and I agree with you. I do agree with you. But going out on radio, can you try and powder it up a little bit for us on the radio rather than being so heavily critical?
Yeah.
I sat there thinking, this is
surreal, isn't it?
We were fully expecting a few cuffs around the ear hole.
Yeah.
Neil, but he actually sat down and said, a lot of what you're saying I agree with, but could you just be a little bit kinder on the radio? So that was quite funny, and it was fine after then. But yeah, I mean, storytellers. There's been lots of them. I mean, Kevin Blackwell could tell a good story. You know, he could hold the room, and I know he had his critics, but he was very, very good at telling stories. Gus Harmer actually last year, who I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
He gave me a brilliant interview, and it was something quite small, but I thought it was a little insight into him as an individual, because I think we all assume that footballers, when they leave training, they're just consuming football 24/7. It was actually after the interview. I said, so how do you chill out? Are you always watching football? He said, I don't watch any football.
Really?
Yeah. He actually said, I don't watch football. When I'm not playing, I'm not watching. I'm playing football in the garden with my young son. I close the door on work when I leave, and I don't think about it. He said there might be the odd game, maybe if it's Coventry, for example, who obviously we all know he's got close ties with. He might watch a Coventry game. But I said, you genuinely don't watch any football when you're not playing? Wow. No. And I just thought that was really interesting. I'm sure he's not the only one.
I don't think we hear anything near enough what we could in terms of their, and I understand there's a privacy issue as well, but getting to know that a different side of the players, I think is really interesting to the fan base. And like you said, they don't have to completely open themselves up and tell us all the secrets, but it's nice to know that character trait, isn't it, of Gus, that look, I'm 100% focused when I'm here and I've to do the business, but my family is where my priorities lie off the pit. So having followed the club through different eras, like a lot of the fan base have as well. What do you think to this current team in comparison to teams gone by?
It's right up there, isn't it? I think he's done. Again, I know Chris, so I might be slightly biased here, but what he's done this season is nothing short of incredible. I was driving back actually from a game on Saturday, and I stuck Praise or Grumble on. And I was absolutely raging with one fan in particular who phoned up. I don't know whether you heard it on Saturday. It was around 5:30. I think it was around 5:30. I was on the M1. And he came on and he just proceeded to whinge about how they not played well. And admittedly, they didn't play well on Saturday. I've not seen the whole game, but it was just whinge after whinge after whinge. And he got talking about the Middlesbrough game, saying that they didn't play well against Middlesbrough.
I heard it, Paul. I know which one you're on about because we were saying same in Cat. We were also on the M1, looking at each other all perplexed. What is this guy talking about?
I'm just like, I'm so glad I'm not in that presenter's chair because I think I'd have faced a disciplinary this morning. Genuinely.
I do think
absolutely killed him on the radio.
We try and be a platform that sort of allows for everybody's different opinions and respecting other people's opinions.
Sure.
But sometimes you just have to go straight down pipe and say, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
have some perspective in what you're doing. And look, I was laughing when you first said what a brilliant job Chris Wilder's doing because he is, and I'm a huge Chris Wilder fan. And I'm laughing because I don't know whether you're still crawling back a little bit. I went to the.
I know what you're going to bring up here.
I went to the end of season 2, which I saw you at. It was good to see you, but you were the presenter that night and did a great job, an absolutely brilliant job. And it's fair to say, none of the team wanted to be there. We'd had a terrible season in the Premier League, and the manager especially didn't want to be there. He didn't think we should have. He thought the do should have been cancelled. There's nothing to celebrate. Why are we even having it? But he's, he does his job, and he always talks about being an employee of the club. So he does what's expected of him, and he turns up. And you got him up on stage to have a word about the season, which in itself, when Chris Wilder's in that sort of mood, it's daunting. So fair play to you. I thought if anybody's going to get a smile out of him, it'll be yourself. He'd had earlier in the season, he'd had that incident where which got clipped and sent round everywhere about the linesman or the referee when he went in to see him. He was eating a sandwich, and I found it incredibly disrespectful that he was eating a sandwich in front of a Premier League manager. Something that hopefully, in the cold light of day, he looks back and thinks, "Oh, what I said there." I'm not speaking for Chris Wilder, but hopefully that's the way he looks back on it. You get Chris Wilder up on stage, and you're talking to him about this awful season that we've had, and you start eating a sandwich in front of him.
I know.
And look, I know you could tell you were mates anyway, but he reacted like my dad would have reacted in terms of, look, I know we're mates, but that's not funny. That's not funny at all. It was one of those awkward moments where I loved how awkward it was for you because
thank you.
You were walking the line.
Thank you for your support.
And you felt wrong side of it, I think, on that occasion.
Yeah.
So, and I knew everything was going to be fine. And we're never going to have a pop at you on stage or anything like that. But I expect you got a bit of a frosty reception afterwards about it.
Yeah, that's the first time ever that I felt my relationship with him was possibly done.
Done, really, after that?
No, well, I say done, but I thought it might take some repair work.
Okay.
I'd had the idea several months out, and I'd had the idea. I've floated it by a couple of club officials who shall remain nameless.
Don't throw them under the bus.
I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. But I did say, look, I'm thinking of doing this to try and lighten the mood. What do you think?
Yes.
And the feedback was, well, from one person, and I'm paraphrasing, they said, I absolutely bloody love it. I love it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea.
No, it doesn't. In my head, it did. And this person said, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. So
they're not your friends. Whoever they are, they're not your friends. Because they knew what they were doing.
Let me say this: they don't work at the club anymore. Not as a result. Not as a result of that, might I add. They are at another club. But yeah, I remember driving to Bramall Lane. I live in Chesterfield now, and I remember driving. I popped in a petrol station. The only sandwich they had left was this kind of dry-looking pulled pork sandwich. It was the only one left. I thought, well, it's got to be that one. So I put it.
That was your last warning, weren't it? That was your last sign to say this isn't for me.
Don't do it. Don't do it. So I got there, and obviously the tables are all being set, and this one individual who said, you know, this is going to be a really good idea was there, and he was like, oh yeah, come on, it's going to be great. He's going to love it. He's going to love it. It's what we need tonight. It's what we need. So it was up there. It was up there on the lectern, and it was being hidden by a napkin, I think. And yeah, as you've said, I said thoughts on the season as you've got to do, and then I took this sandwich out, and he looked at me, and he I don't know whether you guys heard it. He said, "Are you all right?" And I said, Yeah, fine. Carry on. I've not eaten yet, so I mean, and I knew that this wasn't going down well, and I thought, oh dear, I'm in it here. And then, if you remember, to be fair to him, he answered every question.
Yeah, he did. He did.
That then followed. And then, if you remember, I kind of jokingly said, "Oh, we're all right, aren't we?" And kind of gave him a hug.
Yes,
And
I remember.
He kind of reluctantly hugged me back. And then I think we had a break for a meal at that point. And then I went back to my table. Chief exec at the moment, Steve Bettis. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Honestly, I'm not sure." Ollie Norwood loved it, but I think Ollie at that point knew he was going anyway. So he said, "I've just had my P45. I think you'll be getting yours tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh." Then I bumped into Alan Nill, and again, Nill is a great bloke. And I said, "What do you think?" He said, "He's not happy with you." He's not happy. So I'm like, oh God, all these people that I really respect, I'm falling out with. And as you know, we did the rest of the evening. And at the end, I kind of, gave the sign off and said, in Chris we trust and all that kind of stuff, and he will get it right. And I gave him a thumbs up, and he kind of gave me a thumbs up, and off he went. And I thought, well, what do I do now? Do I phone him? Do I leave it? I'm not sure what to do. I was a bit worried about
it. It's an awful position to be in then, isn't it? Because obviously it's meant in jest.
Yeah.
You were trying to lighten the mood.
Yeah.
But
But I kid you not, I left it 2 days and he phoned me. It's like, oh, here we go. And I picked the phone. Hello. And he goes, "We're all right, aren't we?" I went, "I am if you are." He said, yeah. And then, he said, "Look, it was a difficult scenario. Pretty much what you've explained right at the start." He said, "Look, I didn't feel we should have been having that kind of night. Essentially, it was a season of failure, and we're there meant to be all happy and having a drink and all that kind of stuff." He said, "It just didn't feel right. It's been a tough season. I should have taken it in the spirit that you meant it. The timing for me wasn't right." And I said, "Look, I hold my hands up. If I had my time again, I would avoid it." And, we've been great ever since, and we speak regular. And, to go back to what he's done this season, it's just phenomenal when you think about where the club was last year. It's
incredible.
Beaten up, battered, bruised, beaten into a pulp, 104 goals conceded. And to get it back to where it is now, completely rebuilding the squad, rebuilding the club back up, I just think it's absolutely incredible. 2-point deduction, top of the league.
Top of the league. It's outrageous, isn't it? Outrageous.
Yeah, but still some people, not all, some people just still aren't happy. I don't get it. They need to give the head a wobble. You can't play well every week. Luton, it's a tough place to go, bottom of the league, and everybody thought that United would go there and probably steamroller them, but it doesn't work like that. You can't play well every week. And then I hear fans on the radio saying he should have played this player and that player. We're not privy to what's going on the training ground. We don't know the condition, the true condition of these players from game to game. They have experts. They have GPS trackers on them every day in training. Callum O'Hare doesn't start a game and then there's uproar. Well, maybe he wasn't in the right condition to start a game. Maybe Chris saw something in that Luton team that he felt maybe it's not right for Callum from the off.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Look, I'm not here to defend his decisions, but who are we to question this guy after what he's done?
If we were 16th, then you can understand him getting some stick for taking our best player out of the team, Sidney Beck out of the team. But not only did he rotate the team, we won the game. So it's not like, we've dropped a couple of points because he were tinkering and things like this. We've won 7 out of 8. I do not get the. I just think we need some perspective. And I saw online the other day, and I thought it was a perfect way to sum it up. I think he's the victim of his own success because he's created a monster in our fan base that, not entitlement's a strong word, but there's an expectation now that we'll be really strong in this division. And we had 20 players walk out the door at the beginning of the season. He has pieced it back together with new recruits. It's just been an incredible job. And like you say, -2 points as well, a change of ownership. And absolutely, it's never lost on us that there was an unbelievable tragedy as well as part during the season that he's obviously the team were affected by, but he's managed to pull them up again and continue. It's an unbelievable job that he's done. Unbelievable.
the resilience as well. You know, we can talk about the quality that he's brought in, and he's brought incredible quality in. But, you know, equally as important is that resilience, that, you know, that fight, that desire to get 3 points, which is not, I don't think that's easy to get that back when you've just had the season that you've had.
Absolutely.
I think that goes under the radar as well. I think what he's done this season has gone under the radar nationally.
He talks about it. Yeah, I agree. He talks about the culture a lot, doesn't he? And that's what he focuses on, getting that mindset right of the players, bringing in the right people.
I hear a lot about Leeds. I hear a lot about Sunderland. I hear a lot about Burnley. I don't know. Maybe I'm not reading this right. I'm not reading the room right. But I don't think Chris and the team get the amount of credit that some of the others up there are getting.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
And I don't know why that is. I do not know why that is. You know, I'd much rather be watching Sheffield United every week than I would be watching Burnley every week.
Oh, 0-0 every week.
You know, everyone's got their way of doing it, and that's fine. And, you know, Scott Parker's no mug, but give me the Blades every day over there.
Absolutely right. And give me Chris Wilder in charge of the Blades every day of the week.
Yeah.
So, speaking of club legends and managers that have done a fantastic job for Sheffield United, you have an event coming up, don't you, soon at the City Hall, featuring 3 Sheffield United legends. A man that you've already spoken about, Neil Warnock, is there. I believe Jags and Michael Brown will also be joining you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the event you've got coming up, pal? Yeah,
it's at the City Hall, Friday the 2nd of May, which is my mum's birthday. I've not told her yet, so I've double booked myself that night, so I'm going to have to grovel to her. City.
That's her getting some brunch rather than...
Or a ticket at City Hall.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a birthday, which you'll absolutely hate, being a non-football fan, but there we are. But yeah, Neil will be there, Michael Brown, Phil Jagielka. I've not seen Jags for a long time, so I'm looking forward to kind of seeing him again and speaking to him about his career. But yeah, I mean, it's the kind of night that you might expect, sharing stories, talking about careers. There'll be things within it that I'm sure you've never heard before. Michael Brown is a loose cannon, let me say that. So anything is possible.
He was on the pitch as well, to be fair. That adds up.
Was. No Rob Kozluk yet, but there's a chance maybe that he might make an appearance, because there's no way Cozzy will stay out of that. And if you get Rob Kozluk and Michael Brown together, crikey, lawsuits incoming.
Absolutely right.
It's just a chance to have hopefully as well, United will be promoted by then as well. So it could be a right old celebration that night.
It could be great. Warnock could hold an audience himself, and then Michael Brown obviously does a lot of punditry. Jags played for England. It's a brilliant collection of Sheffield United legends. So it's a night I'm really looking forward to.
I've been touring the country with Neil over the last couple of years, really, before and after COVID, doing theatre shows. And we did do one at the City Hall, which was sold out, and you could hear a pin drop. It was brilliant.
Yeah. Is that the Are You With Me tour?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got some more coming up later in the year as well. I might as well plug that as well.
Why not?
But you can find them online. But the City Hall was sold out. You know, you could hear a pin drop in there, and Neil alone could do 6, 7, 8 hours for the stories that he's got. But Brownie, obviously being a former player and Jags as well, can bring some more current stories.
Absolutely,
to the table. So yeah, all I'd say is if you can get there, do join us. It will be a great night, a night of nostalgia. We can talk about things that are happening now at Bramall Lane, and I think there'll be an opportunity, I hope there will be, for the audience to ask questions, submit their questions.
Oh, brilliant. That's good.
So I'm hoping that'll be on the table as well. But, you know, there's still things being finalised. It's a few months out yet, but I think it'd be a really special night. And if you're a Blades fan, I'd strongly recommend you get there.
Absolutely right. Where is it we can get tickets then, Paul?
Ticketmaster.
Okay.
Go to the Ticketmaster website. All the info is there. Due to start, I think, at 8 p.m, but obviously the doors will open a bit earlier. And hopefully the weather will have picked up by then as well. So you can have
I'm sure it will.
A few beers in town beforehand as well. So, yeah, looking forward to it, mate. And I do like doing the hosting stuff. Just a break from the norm, isn't it? And a chance to have a proper chat with people, which I like doing. So, yeah, if you can get there, please do. And I'll have a word with the organisers, Jimmy, and maybe I can get a pair of tickets for the channel that you can do with what you want.
Nice. So somebody can come with me.
Yeah, exactly. I can't promise, but I'll see what I can sort. I'm sure I'll be able to figure something out for you, mate.
Yeah, no problem. I'd love to be there, mate. So I don't mind paying my way as well if I have to. No, I'm only kidding. So yeah, that's brilliant, mate. And you touched on it very briefly there.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll be celebrating promotion to the Premier League? Are you confident that that's going to be the outcome this season?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Whether it's first or second, I don't know. It'd be great to do it as champions, wouldn't it? Don't ask me about what happens next season, because this is the thing, isn't it? I think this is the same for any club going up from the Championship. This league is brilliant. It's my favourite of all the four.
Yeah.
Just because of its competitive nature and its unpredictability. It's notoriously difficult to get out of. I think this year it's not been as good as recent years in terms of strength, but they've taken nothing away from the teams that are up there. It's the journey, isn't it? I think it's the journey, and then you think about the destination, and we all know what the league above is like. It's an absolute monster.
There's such a gulf, isn't there, in quality as well.
And that scares you as a fan, I think.
Well, for me, it sometimes feels like you're having a season on and a season off, where in terms of your enthusiasm and things like, and your enjoyment of the game. Because if we go up and we're not competitive, which we weren't able to be previously, and I understood the constraints, the only silver lining for us is these new owners, and it's an unknown quantity as to how far they will go to try and ensure survival if we get there, and it's still a big if. But there is something, it may be different this time. That's something to look forward to as well. So
yeah, I'd be really interested as well to see what Chris's approach to the Premier League will be this time as well. Because obviously last season he picked up where Hecky had left it, so it was difficult for him to try and put his stamp on it. I think it's always tough that when you come in halfway through. But obviously the last time was the overlapping centre backs, which obviously he's not using this time. So I think it's been a real interesting change from Chris's point of view. He could have easily tried to implicate that again, put that mark on the team again. He didn't have the personnel to do it. But I think for him, he's been re-energized this season. His approach has been different. So I'd be fascinated to see how he plans to attack the Premier League if and when Sheffield United get there, and they should get there.
Well, last time we went up with, obviously we had the 3-5-2, but there was Mark Duffy in the 10. And then as soon as we got promoted, John Lundstrom comes in and we go to a flat 3, so it was a slight, subtle change, but worked. And we ended up finishing 9th, obviously, that season. So he'll certainly not rest on his laurels, and he'll be prepared he'll have something in the back of his mind, I'm sure, should that eventually happen.
And you wonder how much of his approach now is with, I'd love to get inside his head, because how is he thinking? Is there part of his brain that's thinking towards next season? It has to be towards the Premier League.
Yes.
Little things that we're seeing now.
4 at the back.
Yeah. Is he thinking further down the track with the Premier League in mind? Some of his tactical tweaks that he's doing, the personnel that he's bringing in.
2 6s.
Yeah. How much of it is designed towards next season as well? Yeah. What he's done this year has been brilliant. I can't say enough how good a job he has done. The recruitment has been fantastic.
Yeah, it has. How good. Michael Cooper. Michael Cooper's ridiculous.
Cooper, fantastic. I still think United have got the best midfielder in the league, and he's not arrived this year. He arrived last, and that's Harmer. He's different class. And I hear fans of other clubs saying he's not as good as this player. He's not as good as Tanaka.
They'd all take him. They'd all have him. Harmer, for me, is the best in the division. I just think he's absolute different class. And then you've got O'Hare when he's on it, the way he links it. Because I had concerns, but I'm drifting here, but you've got me going. Right, we ramble on here, don't you worry.
I was a little bit concerned about O'Hare when he first. Well, I thought he was a brilliant signing first and foremost.
Agreed.
When he was playing on the left or out towards the left, I think he was getting a bit lost out there, because he's not an out and out, what you call an out and out winger, is he?
No.
So he naturally wanted to drift inside a lot, which is where Harmer likes to play. as well, usually. But obviously his best position is the 10. So I thought there was an imbalance there when you had O'Hare on the left and Raksaki on the right. So I'm glad he's kind of addressed that now with the players he's brought in. He can play Brayton Diaz more out to the left. Harmer's been playing more out to the left, but likes to drift in.
Yep.
Those two, O'Hare and Harmer, they're just telepathic, aren't they? They just
it's great watching them play together.
Oh, the combinations are just incredible.
Like with the Norwich game where it finally started to come together, and they were just flicking to each other and drag backs and a little one-touch play between themselves, and you thought, if these two click, there's going to be trouble for some teams in this league. So it's exciting.
I want to mention Peck as well. Oh my goodness! If we'd have thought he'd have played the amount of games that he's currently played at the start of the season, we'd have laughed.
He's captain material for me, and I know it may be a little bit early, but obviously Arblaster's got the armband at 21 and fully deserved as well. That is the only silver lining really to come out of the terrible situation with Ollie Arblaster and his long injury. Sidney Peck has been the silver lining to that situation, because he wouldn't have got the minutes had Arblaster been fit.
Yeah,
but it's brought him on. It's brought him on significantly, and he's stepped up to that challenge and become a real player. And he's one of the first names on. I appreciate he was out of the team last time, but relatively speaking, he should be one of the first names on the team sheet. Man of the match against Middlesbrough, really, really important player for us now. And I think it's been great to see his development so quick.
Yeah, and we all love to see young players coming through, don't we?
Absolutely right. Not exactly a local boy, but it's still
he is now. Well, I think
counts. He's adopted.
Yeah, adopted son. But he's been brilliant. But in the main, they all have. And through what's been a real, as you said, a tough season in terms of injuries, and the Baldock tragedy was just horrendous. And I think that had a big impact on that Leeds game, because the Leeds game I think came the week after, didn't it?
Yeah. It was really difficult, not for obvious reasons, but then, like in the wake of it, it was like nobody wanted to even say that played a part, because it felt like you were using it as an excuse, and it was a genuine reason that people were so low. It was such a shock.
I mean, I was absolutely bowled over by that. I knew George. That really hit me hard. I've been lucky actually so far. I've not lost anyone close to me. This is going deep now, but I've never had to grieve over anybody yet in my life. So when the George news came through, that's probably the closest that I've come to kind of grieving for somebody.
Yeah. Oh, I understand it. I understand it.
It was strange, because after one of the end of season dues, the one where George knew he was moving, he was so excited about going out to Greece and playing, and we had a long chat in the corridor at Bramall Lane after one of those end of season dues, and just the nicest, most genuine bloke you could ever wish to meet. I'm getting choked up now just thinking about it, but everything you would want from a player.
Yes,
in red and white,
on the pitch and off. It was one of those.
Yeah,
he embodied everything that we want in a player, didn't he? In terms of, the way he represented the club, both on and off the field. He gave absolutely everything on the field. George Baldock in this team now would be incredible. And
not many.
And it's just absolute tragedy, and we're all still feeling it now. And
just talking about it then. I'm sorry to bring the mood down, but
no, it's right that he has his time. He will and should be remembered. So it's no shame in that at all, Paul. So the one thing I will ask you to finish on then, because I know we keep circling back to the manager, Chris Wilder. When you're interviewing him and you're speaking to him, I appreciate you've got a good relationship with him. Do you always feel like he's holding a little bit of something back? Do you always feel like he's got his game face on, or do you ever see him let his guard down? I know we see him let his hair down in terms of he likes to go out and enjoy himself. Certainly after like good experiences with Sheffield United. Yeah, absolutely. But do you feel like he's always on? Do you know what I mean? He's always sort of guarded to a degree. So
no,
or do you feel like you do get to know a little bit more about him?
I think what you hear from him on the radio is literally him saying it how it is. He's not holding anything back.
Great.
Because I have conversations with him on the phone away from the mic, and he speaks exactly the same. There might be a few more swear words in it, but he speaks exactly the same. And, you know, I'm covering the Leeds game next week for the World Feed, the international audience, which, you know, unless you're watching through illegal methods,
no, we don't do
you
that.
won't hear my coverage next week, but you would do if you were in a bar in Magaluf or somewhere like that.
Okay. Some might.
Covering the Leeds game next week.
Yeah.
So I will ring him ahead of that game, and he's very good, and we'll have a long chat, no doubt, and he might have a moan about one or two fans who might have been moaning about recent performances and that kind of stuff.
He hears more than people
He
think.
does. He hears everything. Trust me, he hears everything. But he's never. Trust me, he's never holding anything back.
Great.
Those interviews, I watch them, and they are from the heart. They are honest, and I can guarantee you, if you were to ask him exactly the same questions without a microphone up his nose, he'd give you the exact same response.
I never think he's being dishonest in the way that he speaks. It's more a case of I think he can be quite cagey with the media at times, and sort of alludes to certain things like Kiefer Moore were going to be back. Tyrese Campbell's, you know, got a back injury when we all thought it was a hamstring injury and ended up being out 2 months. Sort of thing. But there's method to his madness, isn't there? You don't want why we haven't a right to know as a fan base, to be honest, for one thing. But also you don't want to give the opposition any advantage at all. So it's just a bit of old school gamesmanship, I think. And I love that about him.
That's exactly what it is, mate. That's exactly what it is. He's been around the block. He's got over 1,000 games as a manager under his belt.
Hopefully another promotion to come on his CV.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he's got the new contract, which, you know, I'm thrilled about. I think that is fully deserved. I think that goes without saying. I just hope that, you know, next week, Leeds home, that United fans raise the roof. I'm sure they will, but, you know, let's see whether they can take it up yet another notch.
Go on then. Finishes on a prediction for the Leeds game.
I think, to use a Chris Wilder phrase, it'll be a tie game. It'll be a tight game, one goal
under the lights.
Under the lights at Ramble Lane. I think Blades will. I've got to say, I think Blades will win, but I think it'll be tight, 2-1, 1-0. Because I look now at the squad, it is far stronger than it was when United played Leeds at Leeds. That goes without saying. And Leeds are on a great run. They've got a tough game as we speak tonight. Against Sunderland. But I'm fancying United at home by 1 goal.
Paul, no better way to end, mate. Thank you so much for that.
No, thank you.
A reminder of Paul's show at the City Hall on the 2nd of May. Get your tickets at Ticketmaster. It's going to be a fantastic evening with Neil Warnock, Phil Jagielka and Michael Brown. Paul, thank you so much for joining us, pal. Is there anything else you want to cover before we let you go?
No, I think we've done it. I thought this was going to be like a 5-minute chat just to
so did I, mate.
But, you know, we've done nearly an hour. So I'm quite happy with that, mate. Don't worry.
This is how I get round keeping people longer than I should. Just call it the Ramble, and then you can always fall back on that. So, so thank you to everybody that's joined us. Get your comments in. Let Paul know exactly what you think about the evening coming up and if you're going to be attending or not. But for now, come on, you red and white wizards. Up the Blades!